Welcome to Planet Poet Words in Space. My guests today are the founding members of PRP, Poets Read Poetry. Pamela Manché Pearce began the group in her Garrison, New York living room in 2010 with a simple idea to have poets gather and discuss the poems of other poets based on a predetermined theme, followed by a shop talk discussion of the members' own writing lives. Poets Jo Pitkin, Andrew Acciaro, and Frank Ortega joined Pamela to form the original group, which disbanded in 2014 and was revived on Zoom in the summer of 2021 when I was invited to become a fifth member. And as we do with all of our get-togethers, Pamela Manché Pearce is our captain and will lead us through the show. Hello, Pamela. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, everybody. Great to see all of you. It's always my favorite night of the month when I see all of you on in my living room, as I once did in the flesh in Garrison. Well, it's interesting. I think that the word flesh might be a wonderful segue into our homage tonight to the poet Francis Saltus, who was brought to us by Andrew.
Yeah.
And right, and what a discovery he is. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew immediately, who is going to, in his own creative way, which is perfect for Poets Read Poetry, give us some bio on Francis Saltus. Take it away, Andrew.
Well, thank you, Sharon and Captain Pam. Ahoy, PRP, poets reading poetry, and kind listeners. Francis Saltus, as curious as his double last name, died near here, where from I am speaking. His appropriately gloomy grave in Hudson Valley, New York's Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, obscure as it is open to the public gaze. He was born the year Poe died, in 1849, in Manhattan, educated at Columbia, spoke several languages, and traveled to Paris, where his idol and model Baudelaire still resonated among poetry's demonic saints. The breadth, range, and seemingly ceaseless subjects of Saltus's interest are reflected in the prolific production folded into the 7, or counted differently 9, and sundry other unclaimed or acclaimed published works from 1873 to 1895, whose titles alone evoke his earnest, impish wink and raised eyebrow, such as Flasks and Flagons, Honey and Gall, Shadows and Ideals, Fact and Fancy, Dreams After Sunset. Sonnet upon sonnet, Francis S. was enamored of the sonnet form as a spry vehicle for his restless pen. Seemingly cavalier about his perversely unorthodox contextual shadings, and with a tip of his matter-of-factly dapper hat to the socially required God, Saltus granted himself, by wistful, if reverent juxtaposition, imprimatur license to entertain darker regions, without fear of censorship. Even with his too often archaic language and tedious though musical rhyme, his content was of a fearless historical and worldly grasp. Saltus's poetry, with its indiscriminate, symbolic, erotic, comic, decadent, and proudly celebratory nature, stands remarkable for its plurality, from lists of liquors to sensuous, sultry exoticism that would make the great scholar on Orientalism Edward Said blush. Saltus, a symbolist, decadent, ahead, and untypical, was both before and not yet of his time. While others in the juggernaut of modernity were flying the hot rails, our nonplussed little hero and PRP mascot was among the many sidelined, as it were, by the big marquee names: Poe, Gautier, Verlaine, Rimbaud, Yeats, Mallarmé, Pound, Eliot, Williams, Stevens, etc., 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 all so positioned to dominate the fresh wasteland of 20th and 21st century poetry. Nonetheless, as is our wont, we must seek for the corners, forgotten alleys, and cobwebbed misplaced brilliance for a bit of renewal, a dram's worth of inspiration, and a sugar cube's absinthe kiss, and salute Sir Saltus, or Cupid Jones, as he at times fancied a nom de plume, who with panache did imbibe and no doubt enjoyed and celebrated in leading his bohemian charge every chance his liberated Victorian heart so desired. Cheers to him and his ghost. Read him again for the ambiance, synesthetic flavor and charms of a long to lost irrelevant poet comrade in arms.
Wow.
Wow.
Hip, hip,
Woo!
hurrah.
Hey, Andrew, that is a
Fabulous.
wonderful, it's a fabulous introduction to Saltus. And, I did a little, thank you so much. I did a little poking around myself, and I found out that he had a real obituary in the New York Times on June 26, 1889. And I dug a little bit more, and I found it is a very, very long obituary, but I want to read you just a little bit of it because it's interesting to look at how an obituary would be written in 1889 versus the present. So the beginning of it says, Francis S. Saltus died on Monday at midnight in the Riverside Sanitarium at Tarrytown after an illness of several weeks. His trouble was a gastric one, and for several days prior to his death, he had been unable to take solid food of any description. He became troubled with insomnia some time ago and began taking a medication for this malady. Instead of taking the dose prescribed by the physician, Mr. Saltus gradually grew to taking double and treble the amount. He finally got into such a condition that he had to be taken to Riverside Sanitarium, where he was treated by Dr. Morgan. And it goes on and on to talk about his actual death. And it says, and here's the thing, but 2 hours before his death, when he could scarcely move the muscles of his hands, he conversed wittily and sarcastically with an old friend who was visiting him. And the obituary talks about how eccentric he was, which is what Andrew has said. And, he was hanging out in these Moldy Billy's or Billy's Molds bar on University Place, and he was a real eccentric figure. But it also talks about how prolific he was and how educated he was and what he was really able to do. So he is somebody who needs to be brought back into the spotlight, which is exactly what we're doing tonight. All righty, so why don't we start with, I'm looking at Jo. How would you like to go first, Jo?
Okay, I wanted to thank Andrew for bringing Saltus to our attention. I feel living not so far away from Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow that he's kind of one of ours. And it's funny because we've, read a lot of his poems over the years. I just wanted to make sure I did not pick a sonnet, even though that's his form of choice. So I picked this poem from his book, Dreams After Sunset from 1892, and it's called Sleep. Subtle softness, soulward stealing. Sleep, sweet savior, still sincere. Silent, soothing sorrow stealing. Somber shadow, sad, severe. That's really the whole poem. I loved it because it was so different from the other poems we've seen of his. It has that interesting kind of negativity I know he's a bit of a decadent poet, but I also just like craft-wise, I love the alliteration, every single word with an S, hard to say. I'm lisping it out.
If you're going to press on it, press on it.
That's absolutely right. I think when we talk about forms and prompts, and we talk about ways to get us going as poets when we can't get our motors started, this is inspiring, to take a letter of the alphabet and see how far you can go with it. Right. It's like the poetry where there's no missing is usually the letter E, I think, is one that we usually look at. So it's really lovely. It's really a lovely poem. And it's one of his, I think, one of his more delicate, introspective, kind of subtle poems.
Well, intermittent drunkenness does not absolve you of lack of discipline. So he was really like that. And it isn't that he was consciously experimental. He was experimental because he needed what he needed, as most poetry going that way does.
I just had to add to what's already been said about, I don't know a poet whose range of work styles and body of work styles is this diverse. If you were to blind out his name, I could offer 10 different pieces. You would swear were different writers. Most writers stay with what their groove is, right? What makes them hot, what makes them cool, whatever it is. We have seen the variety of the kind of work, and it's way beyond his era. Often it is of his era. You can feel it, the era he lived in. But so many of them are, you can't measure the time of them. And that's part of what his amazing energy is all about, right?
Yeah, yeah. He was, in a way, he was outside the swath of identity crisis.
Mhm.
Which still goes on, yes, with writers.
He seems supremely self-conscious and unself-conscious at the same time. He's able to do that. And I think what you said, Andrew, he does what he needs to do. He uses form and he uses his weirdness to create some unique things, and we're always surprised by him. Whatever you bring in, it says, "Oh my goodness, that sounds contemporary," or that's whatever it is. And this particular poem for me is very onomatopoetic, if that's correct. Subtle softness, soulward stealing, sleep. It's like sleep. It's a lullaby. It's soothing. The S's, the sibilants are doing that, and the words almost don't make a difference if you're serenading someone with this to lull them into that state. I wonder who the savior is. I mean, it's only one day after Easter. We're doing the show, but I don't know.
Sleep.
Well, the sleep, yeah. I mean, with his kind of lifestyle, an actual peaceful sleep might have been a huge thing for him. But I have to say again, even though the words do their hypnotic magic, absolutely lullaby, absolutely hypnotic, they actually are, all with S's, utterly descriptive of what the state of sleep brings. I mean, it's amazing. The whole thing.
Yes. And I really thank you, Jo, for going in this direction and bringing in something very small and very different from everything else that we're going to hear tonight, and everything else we're going to hear. Each thing is very different. So
well, I have one more thing to say.
Yes, go ahead.
Of course, the savior is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Morbius.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I
musicality.
was going to just add that when you go, I was scrolling through a lot of online public domain books like you all were. And I have this one hit me just not just because of the length, but I did think it was kind of modern to me.
It is.
If you took out, there's there is rhyme and repetition, but I just kept thinking this seemed really not like the other poems that we've looked at of his.
No.
So
Good job.
but yeah, I think it was fun to look at the actual books. That's what I was having fun with. You're looking at the actual book.
Yes.
The covers weren't great, but they were really fun to look at. Anyway.
Thank you very much. I mean, the savior of sleep. Maybe that's why he was doubling and tripling the prescription that the doctor had given him when he was in hospital. He was trying to get here, trying to get to sleep, like so many people in hospitals do even now. So anyway, thank you very much, Jo. That was really terrific. How about you, Frank? I'm looking at you on the screen. Would you like to go next?
Yep. All right. So I did the same thing. I got lost in the books, the copies from the ancient Harvard libraries and all that kind of thing. I looked through. Okay, so I found a poem online from a source that I trusted because all the other poems in there I found in the books when I went on the online books. But I have to say, this is an example of Francis Saltus. Saltus is, I don't know, his what he's left behind is the fact that this poem I'm reading, I have no proof that he wrote because I couldn't find it. I looked through the table of contents of 8 or 9 of the books that were available to be opened. But he was so prolific, right? So I have confidence this is his because you'll hear it because this theme is so hard to tackle. Like graduate students in writing programs, they shy away now, right, from anything that's romantic or introspective in that kind of big way, like, poetry in the world and all that and the human race. And the thing is, that theme is never going to go away. It's timeless. And so this particular poem is about just this very job we all do. the writer, the artist. And here we go. And I mean, you got to remember, so I don't have a year for this. That's the thing. That's what I was really trying to find, was what year it came out. But here we go. The ideal. Toil on, poor muser, to attain that goal where art conceals its grandest, noblest prize. Count every tear that dims your aching eyes. Count all the years that seem as days, and roll the death tide slowly on. Count all your sighs. Search the wide, wondrous earth from pole to pole. Tear unbelief from out your martyred soul. Succumb not. Chase despondency. Be wise. Work, toil, and struggle with the brush or pen. Revel in rhyme. Strain intellect and ken. Live on and hope despite man's skeptic leers. Praise the ideal with your every breath. Give it life, youth and glory, blood and tears, and to possess it, pay its tribute, death.
Wow.
Nice
Wow.
dramatic reading.
Manifesto.
Wow.
I'm in on that one, Frank.
Yeah. There's the charge.
That's how he makes me feel. I mean,
Yes,
this is
yes.
utterly sincere. This is no saccharine. This is not changed 100 years ago, 300 years ago. I stand by this as sort of a moral code for artists.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a call on the barricade, you know,
Yes.
universal for utopian thinking, even if utopias fail.
Ah, I love the death
It's-
tides. Death
Yeah.
tides.
Yes. I like the one one that your aching eyes. I mean, these references are really so wonderful. I love that, and give it life, youth. You know,
Yes.
giving your youth to
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
Inspiration.
Well, it's really you're really all in. If you're
Yeah.
doing this work, you are really and the poor muser in the first line. Poor muser is
Oh,
very.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
so it's
good.
so like that's us. There we
Yeah.
are.
That's it. That's his humor. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
It's
And then-
absolutely great.
And
And
then
And
his
like you said, aching eyes. How modern is that?
Mm.
How
Yeah.
actually how transcendent, almost like
Yes.
Shakespearean is that?
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And of course, it is a sonnet.
Yes.
Oh, it's definitely a sonnet. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I don't know if this is right, but I don't remember. This is like his Ars Poetica, right? He's really telling us
Yes.
what his
Yes.
process is or his standpoint on his art. I don't think we've ever read one of those before that really revealed a lot more about his own inclinations. I mean, we've read
Yeah.
a lot about his drinking, I know that, but
And
But-
his advice to strain intellect and ken. Woo.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so good. Sorry.
But this is also such a wonderful, I mean, Joe's is a wonderful choice for things that we already mentioned, but this is a really wonderful choice, Frank, because it enlightens us about this aspect of him,
Yeah.
of Saltus, that he could be having this decadent bohemian
Yes.
high life, and at the same time, he's a very committed artist who's very
Yes.
prolific. And we all know that it's always amazing when we know in our lives that we know as we read and we learn about various artists that some of them could do that. Some of them could
Yes.
live both lives at the same time.
Sure.
It's not true of every artist. It's not true of every person, but he was really able to do that.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Sounds like he had a lot of energy.
Whew.
Yes,
Well, fueled by substances, perhaps at times.
Well,
that's true.
Your decadence needs to be justified.
That's good. That's a good one. That's a very good one, Andrew.
I also think the line "live on and hope despite man's skeptic
Yes.
leers," because
Oh, yes.
that was true in his time, but especially now.
Now more
For
than
to
ever.
read Saltus, and most people will go, "Oh my God, you know, and not see through the prejudice against the time and against his writing.
Right.
And what you picked out there, Sharon, is the diamond of romanticism. Right there. That thing, that inspiration, that call to keep going.
Right.
That
Mhm.
Beckett, I'm going to
Yes.
go on, even if I can't
Yes.
go on.
Yes.
You know,
It never stops. I mean, there's always despondency and doubt. And what I find about his poems is that they make reference to earlier times, earlier classics, and that's not done anymore. That's so, I mean, he anticipated modernism and Eliot, and now it's just like, what is that? I mean, what are you talking about?
Right.
It's
Right.
not,
Very passe.
and it's not. I think it's coming back. I
Well,
think the
stuff always
connection.
goes. It's a pendulum. I mean, it
Yes.
goes completely
Yeah.
out the window, and then then it comes back. It's like anything else.
Yes.
And we need it. We never needed that more than we need that right now. I mean,
Oof.
especially. I mean, we just desperately need it. So let's hope. Let's hope. So
Some poets who would write a piece like this, I could, if I didn't know them, I might suspect that they weren't being 100 or 1,000%
Right.
sincere in every word. But knowing him and his body of work,
Yeah.
it's just like, no, this is definitely that side of him not often revealed, but there it is. And I stand by every word of this as a poet my whole life, as I'm sure all of you do. Like, this is a long haul thing, not easy, right?
No.
Aching eyes, the whole thing, and the mockery of those around you and all that.
right.
Here,
It's-
here.
Yeah.
You know, and the feeling that you can work, you can hack at something, and you can hack at it, and you can hack at it, and then one day something something appears out of
Yeah.
all of that work. So it is the long haul. It is the long haul, and this is great. I mean, this could be lifted out and used in some other way. I don't quite know how yet, but I mean, it's all there. So thank you very much, Frank. This is also a wonderful choice. Thank you very much.
Yes.
All righty, so let's see. Who should we move in? How about you, Sharon? Should we
Okay.
have Sharon now?
Sure. I may be mispronouncing a couple of words, and please correct me after I finish reading the poem. This is called Tea. From what enchanted Eden came thy leaves that hide such subtle spirits of perfume? Did eyes pre-Adamite first see the bloom, luscious nepenthe of the soul that grieves? By thee the tired and torpid mind conceives, fairer than roses brightening life's gloom. Thy protean charm can every form assume, and turn December nights to April eves. Thy amber tinted drops bring back to me fantastic shapes of great Mongolian towers, emblazoned banners, and the booming gong. I hear the sound of feast and revelry, and smell, far sweeter than the sweetest flowers, the kiosks of Pekin, fragrant of oolong.
This is a companion poem to the coffee one we read, which was
Yeah,
what, recently?
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy.
I mean,
Oh,
does he go
open up
through
your
all the
nostrils.
beverages somewhere?
Probably.
He
It's-
probably does. Yes, drinks,
Well, look-
alcoholic drinks for sure.
It feels so good to read. It's like, it's
It's
delicious to read.
Mm.
it is delicious, and look at how he. I mean, again, when we talk about how poets find material, I mean, what could be more prosaic than tea? I mean, it's right there all the time, and he elevates it, and makes it into something really delicious and exciting.
And like the epitome and the pinnacle of sensuality in a way.
Yes, yes. I
Yeah.
also like the way that and turn December nights to April eves. And when I think of December nights, I think about this dark, cold, silent, oppressive middle of the night. But when I think of an April eve, I think of, pastel sundown and, gentle breezes happening and the smell of flowers beginning to bloom. So what he packs into 5 words is pretty amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
And December nights, it's very clipped. to
Yes,
April
exactly,
Eves.
exactly.
It's
April Eves. It's like Eves. It's just wonderful.
the
You know,
amber tinted drops.
right,
It's just
right.
beautiful stuff. And I had to look up pre-Adamite, if I'm
Hmm.
pronouncing that. That's implies the luster of a diamond.
Ah, yes.
Ah,
Eyes like a
wow.
diamond first see the bloom. And then luscious nepenthe was a drug remedy for grief that was discussed in the Odyssey.
See?
So he is like, he
Right.
talks about drugs here. It's
Yes.
like tea is a drug.
Right. Well, I thought of that when I first read this, that tea could mean something different to Saltus than what I have my the Liptons that's sitting in my kitchen. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
It also reflects his Columbia education. He was reading the classics, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I like Sharon, I love that. Well, I love the whole last stanza, but I love the amber tinted drops. But I also love it, and he does this a lot from what I remember of other poems where he brings in those exotic, like the Oriental or the Asian or whatever, but he's saying those I mean, I don't think I would ever drink a cup of tea and think of great Mongolian towers. That whole the first three lines of that last stanza I really love.
Well, it's that whole Orientalism of Victorian Western culture. It just was part of the culture, was so influential. But it reminds me of, Omar Khayyam, that whole sensuality. It's really in the same, I don't know if they were the same dates. I don't know. Does anybody know that?
Not
Earlier.
top of my head.
But
I just
like
reread
this
it. Just
I like-
reread it.
yeah, I like this better. I think it's succinct, and really stunning.
Well, and he's doing the poet's mission. First of all, he's taking it's tea, and come on, I mean, and I love tea, but to go this deep with it, and he starts out leaves. He says, right, leaves. So he's
Yes.
starting with leaves, and he ends with the Mongolian towers because if you think about the aromas and the tastes, they evoke that past in probably a realistic way. Those teas were probably steeping and being served in those times and eras, and it all just comes alive like
Right.
big time. It's so impressive.
It's also to me that the tea is a muse. The tea is evocative of, it
Right.
releases his
Right.
creativity and the sensuality that he has in his work. I find it's a trigger of sorts.
Yep.
Right. And I also think that he's able to use his language to put us there. I mean, the lines that say fantastic shapes of great Mongolian towers, emblazoned banners, and the booming gong.
Whoa.
I mean, I'm there.
Whoa.
I mean, this is like one of those 1950s movies, I can't even think of the name of them, where they're going across the plains on horseback, and they're in this very exotic, to us, extremely exotic environments, and he really takes us there from something tea, which is such a prosaic everyday item. He takes us there. So,
it's like Joe's selection, Sleep, which the words are very lulling, and the words themselves, they bring you in this sensuous web.
Yes, they do.
It's very incantational. It's you read this over and over, and all of a sudden you're in a different state of mind.
And also, I get, when what we know about Saltus, I mean, this is such a curious guy with so much energy. I mean, he's busting to have everything happen in his life and to explore whatever he possibly can. I mean, he's really going to take us there to the extent that he can. And a lot of it's in his imagination, of course. So.
Yes, and knowledge itself is like the golden fleece.
Yes.
It has a mythic history. So he's using all of it, not self-consciously in the way that you would filter or censor or say, I can't use this because a certain audience wouldn't hear it. It's all there. It's all part of everything. It's the fabric. It's a whole tapestry.
Tea, a one-word title, was that done at that time? Seems incredibly modern to have one-word title.
I agree.
I saw a lot of those in the table of contents of the the archived books, And I know there was a whole bunch of drinks. They were one word titles. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you. So, alrighty. Well, since we're on on drinks, why don't I go next and we'll go to Chateau Margaux.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Here we go.
I don't have a date on this, so let me just, okay. Here we go. Chateau Margaux. There is a power within the succulent grape that made thee stronger than all human power. It baffles death in its exulting hour and leaves its victim, fortune, to escape. The cheering drops can magically drape atrocious thoughts of doom with bloom and flower, turning to laughing calm, care's torment sour, and flooding dreams with many a gentle shape. Ecstatic hope and resurrection lie in thy consoling beauty, and whene'er pale mortals sip thee, bringing soothing peace. I see a blue and orange scented sky, a warm beach blessed by God's untainted air, circling the snowy parapets of Nice.
Mm.
Wow.
Makes you want to go out and drink.
Yeah.
Well, there's the synesthesia, right?
Yeah.
A blue and
Yeah.
orange scented sky.
A blue and orange scented sky.
That's my
Yeah.
favorite.
Wow.
That's my favorite. I love that one. Oof.
Me too.
I just marked it myself on this. Yep, that's a good one. Wow.
That's a really good one. And again, he takes us to Nice. The
Yeah.
snowy, we're
At the end.
we're in another place. I mean, and thinking,
Totally.
In his lifetime, travel abroad was just for the very, very, very few people. I mean, for the really, people who were very, very wealthy and able to do that. So he's bringing us someplace, and he probably went there, but he's bringing us to another place. So, and the rhyming, I mean, he's able to do that. I think the rhyming, so that it's very subtle. It's not heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, he really is
heavy.
he's a master of that.
He is. I find it very weird. The first line, there is a power within the succulent grape that made thee stronger than all human power.
Yeah.
It's almost little lamb who made thee,
Yes,
Exactly.
yes,
I agree
yes.
too.
Yes,
Blatant.
it has that Blakean thing. Yeah.
But he's pointing out something again, like tea. Tea is just this leaf that you dry, but then you add boiling water. A grape is this tiny little fruit.
Yes.
But if we hadn't figured out fermentation and inventing wine, etc., I mean, he brings that home. The idea that it's this little grape has this power that is beyond even description.
Yeah. Yeah, to bring it back
Oh.
to Blake again, it's like the minute particulars
That's right.
of the universe are all there. It's like he's tripping without the tripping drugs. He's offering us those travels that you were talking about. He's poetically offering us generously what that experience could be like.
Yes.
You can imagine him sitting on a rock on those Mediterranean isles and
Yes.
Of
elbowing
course.
Salvador Dali.
Yeah. I mean, he predates all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
we all jumped on that. I mean, I did one that I see a blue and orange scented sky. I mean, there's a lot of, a lot of stuff in that grape for him. We don't know what else is, I mean, we'll never know what other things he had going. We really don't know what other aids to his imagination he was employing.
You must be respectful of the things that could kill you.
Right. Well, I mean, I keep going back into the telling line in the obituary that he kept doubling and tripling the medication that he was supposed to be taking. So he says he has boundary issues. Let's put it that way. They would say he has boundary issues. So
I can see him convincing all the staff to help him.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they say that even at the end, in his last hours of his life, he was being witty and sarcastic with his friends. So, what we haven't mentioned is the one picture of him that we have has this little hat, has this very charming little, it's not a cap. And I have to tell you that I did extensive for me costume research on that hat that he was wearing in that time period. I
Fantastic.
cannot come up with anything.
Uh-huh.
I finally came to the conclusion that he customized an existing hat. So
Ooh.
it's like either a top hat or
Whoa.
something. I'm serious. Look at the
Uh-huh.
picture that he crushed down.
Mm.
So it's
Right.
a very jaunty little cap that he wears at a very Parisian angle, and I
Yes.
think that he customized. So he's quite something. He's quite a catch for all of us. So
And he must have liked that hat, because that portrait with that hat is in most of the books, or many of the books, as the front piece photo. So that's really interesting. I wanted to add that again, without if you were to look at these and not know when he was writing, the absolute earliest you could peg him would be post World War I or World War I onward.
Mhm.
The fact that he wrote these kinds of things well before, let's say, that modern era of writing, it's incredible. The range.
You definitely need to absorb the exact times. When you say 1873 or 1860 something, you have to know this was the time of the Civil War.
Yeah.
This was a time of so many different
Okay.
things happening. The events of that time kind of give you an orientation about it.
He also talks about self-medicating with alcohol. I don't know if that's been done before. They cheering drops can magically drape atrocious thoughts of doom with bloom and flower.
Yeah.
You know, to do that, it's not a pan.
And I-
It's
Well,
it's
and
more than
and
that.
my favorite in that line, in that vein, is the third line. It baffles death regarding grape and wine. It baffles death. That's just fantastic. Again, that's probably him with the medication at the end, right to the end. You know, it baffles death.
Yeah.
I was just going to throw in two thoughts. I defer to Andrew on the bio here, but I believe he did study in Paris.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's where
Yes.
I know he studied with Gautier, but I don't know if that was during that time. So he was living in France at some point. And the other thing is I couldn't find any literary criticism on him except a contemporary person, and I'm going to send you the link, who called him a poet of decomposition. And I keep thinking, this is actually not one of those poems. We've read a lot of his that did go into the, the gory and, sort of depressing side of things, but this is a positive, hopeful poem in some weird way. I mean,
Oh,
it's not, it's a praise poem for the grape and the result of the wine, but this just has a different tone to it entirely. It's certainly, you can call this the poet of decomposition.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
So, sometimes I thought you meant deconstruction is a little too early for that.
No, literally
Totally.
decomposition. But I think whoever said that is thinking of, he does have a sort of a death cult in his
He does.
So-
I agree.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
he definitely
Yeah.
does. He definitely does. And his generation did. I mean,
Right.
Yes.
I was going to say that
Also-
sensibility is very old to Shakespeare's time, the memento mori, all of that.
Sure.
The metaphysical
Sure.
poets all faced that and took it as death as almost like a pet.
Right.
Mhm.
But also, when we talk about the Civil War in the United States, that there was a cult of death right after the
Yes.
Civil War.
Right.
So
Yes.
many thousands of men had died, and childbirth. There was so much death around.
Right.
So many births ended in death, either of the child and or the mother. The Metropolitan Museum of the Costume Institute put on one of the most beautiful exhibitions, which was called "Mourning Becomes Her." And it was
Ooh.
about this. It was about the cult of mourning that sprang up in the United States. Art made out of the hair of the deceased person, black clothing, and all of the rituals that went with it. So I always see poets of his generation in that as part of that. And it isn't always true in what he's writing, but it's there. It adds a lot of ballast to his work too, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, we have to move on because we want to hear Andrew. Andrew,
Right.
thank you, everybody. Okay, Andrew, you're up.
Okay, this is going toward what Joe was talking about, the decomposition. Landscape of Flesh by Francis Saltus from Honey and Gall, 1873. 5 stanzas of excerpts. I roamed within a hideous land and saw that ground and soil of human flesh were made. I trod on trembling bosoms hot and raw, at times obliged through viscera to wade. And tottering onward, agonized, I prayed, while towering rocks of flesh devoid of flaw loomed for my gaze in symmetry arrayed. Beyond, I saw a vast rage-fuming sea of crimson, bloods. Thick waves with ceaseless roar broke with a brutal savageness of glee upon a beach of human nail, ashore. Besprent with jagged teeth, grim shells all sore, gnashing a hymn of ivory melody, timed by the deep, swift, bubbling tides of gore. Huge pools of bile and marrow here and there nourished dwarfed trees with solid trunks of bone, while from their boughs hung leaves of fibrous hair, willowy, gnarly, and all groundward prone. Some seemed the tresses of a hag or crone, others the silkier locks of maidens fair, all blooming in this hybrid nameless zone. No soul, no sound, no welcome step was heard, save time to time a ghost wail from the sky, trilled from the hoarse throat of a weird, odd bird, which featherless and gaunt soared moaning by. I saw it swoop to clutch a wart, then fly over the long hair branches which it stirred, then dive into the blood sea with a sigh. Its waves rise higher. God, its red sprays burst roughly upon the flesh cliffs far below. Each soul that dies on earth is here accursed. New eyes must shine here, and new blood must flow. Fresh corpses and fresh bones new worlds bestow, to quench this howling ocean's sateless thirst. My place with others has been marked, I know.
Woo!
Woo!
Andrew.
My God.
Wow.
Wow.
What a final poem for tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
I would observe it's not a sonnet. It's too long to be, unless it's double or triple sonnets in there. And I also wonder, does anyone think this is one of those post-absinthe creations? You know,
Maybe.
like
Yes.
after a
Sounds.
night.
Yes, he went
This
very
is
deep
like
here.
a little,
Very deep.
and it's a really surreal. I mean, it kind of buoys what that critic was saying about the poet of decomposition. He must have been talking about this
Yes.
poem.
It's a real hellscape.
Absolutely.
Gosh, or
Those trees, that was a dwarf
The
trees,
dwarfed
solid
trees.
trunks of
Yeah.
bone. The bows are hair of all ages. What an image. That's
Right.
incredible.
that
It is like, it is Bosch-like. It also
Oh,
prefigures the slaughterhouse
true.
of the Civil War.
Absolutely.
come.
And I don't know
Oh,
what year
yeah.
this was.
well, it's 1873.
1873. So it's after. It's right after.
Because I saw
10 years after.
that ground and soil of human flesh. I mean, like stepping over the
Mhm.
bodies and
Yes.
Yeah.
in the battle. I'm wondering if Walt Whitman was influenced by Saltus.
Ooh.
Possible.
Mm.
Very possible.
Ooh.
I mean,
Possible. Catch.
it's sort of a cleaned up version in terms of cleaned up is the wrong
Right.
word,
And I wonder if
Simplified.
Lovecraft came across a copy
Yes.
somewhere. He read a lot.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I was just thinking of the
It's
word
interesting. It's interesting you said that, Frank, because I see him between Poe and Lovecraft, but
Right.
I
Mhm.
lean him more toward Poe than Lovecraft.
Oh, yes.
Lovecraft
yes.
is a little more, I don't know how to put it, weirder in not a good sense,
Mhm, mhm.
but that way. It's and Poe is more this kind of larger, almost
Yes.
part of the romantic
Yes,
tradition.
yes.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
But they
it's,
inspire each other. They inspire each other.
it's not as
It's like they-
paranoid as Lovecraft.
No.
No,
right,
what is?
right, right. No, and he
Yeah.
places himself. He knows this is, the ending of those excerpts place him in that place where he says he knows his place is
Mhm.
waiting. It's,
Oof.
it's a larger
Mhm.
free wasteland that he's describing. Apocalypse.
Yeah, but it has that scope, that epic scope that Whitman had later on.
Mhm.
Yes,
There is an epic quality of it, and
definitely.
Yeah, in excerpts that I didn't include, he goes into all of the different peoples of the earth, all the different. It's amazing stuff, but it's like at least twice as long.
I mean, I'd love to find. I'm trying to figure out how old he was when the American Civil War. So this was in 18. He died. I'm trying to figure out how he avoided being in the American Civil War, right? Because he was born barely. He was born in what, 1849?
1849. So he
So
would
he was
be
a little too young, just slightly too young, but he may not have been in the United States. And he may have been able to avoid the whole thing somehow. But the influence of it, I mean, the blood of it is really there. I mean, the line that I just caught my heart is a vast rage, fuming sea of crimson blood, thick waves with ceaseless roar. Oh my God. You know, and the passion of this man. I mean, you know, the scope of what he's able to do and the variety of, I mean, look what the variety of it.
He's much less inhibited than the English poets of the time, for example, Tennyson, and he's more Byronic in his passion, but it's more American somehow.
Well, I would say, so let me throw in what I think that what I look at is I always look at people's culture. And, you know, Tennyson's a Brit, he's English. And Saltus is the American kid who is a very privileged background, a very wealthy family. He's very entitled, and he seems to have a lot of freedom. He's very well educated, but he's transatlantic education, and he seems to be going back and forth and have a lot more freedom to absorb other cultures and to be a playboy, to hang out with people, to try all sorts of different things. And he seems, you know, has a lot more freedom, not only because he's American, but probably because of his privilege and his ability to travel.
Mm-hmm.
right, and that indiscriminate acceptance of things is the American thing.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
he's less inhibited and less worried about formalities.
Right.
Yes.
Variety.
You know?
I think that's very American.
Yes.
And that conviction he has, the way like the beat poets had, that their first their thought, if it's coming from a sincere place, right? Well, it's true of any writing. Then it's authentic. It doesn't need to get self-edited or tamed down, right? Because he believed in everything that was coming out of him, because it shows in the writing, no matter how extreme or dramatic.
Right.
Mm.
And Sharon mentioned at the end that he was such an enigmatic figure. And I have to also, that's totally true. And I want to add that of the many, you know, there's often poets you wonder, like, gosh, I wish I could have met them. He is one where you absolutely wonder what he was like in real life, even though he says so much in his work.
Right.
Look at his bio, look at his picture. It's like, what was he like in person?
Right.
Whoa. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Right. Well, he's really fascinating. And, you know, we were saying before about all the cultural, I mean, he also brings into his work the joy and pleasure that the French find in life.
Yes.
You know,
Yes,
and also when we think about it, we go back to small things. I mean, how that matters. Details matter so much in French culture, and the ordinary elevated. I mean, how a napkin is folded, or a tie is tied, or a bouquet of flowers is arranged. I mean, he has absorbed some of that too.
Yes.
Joe, do you want to add something?
I'm just thinking about him in his times, like who his contemporaries would have been in America. I'm trying to think that. But what I thought was funny, and I think this is the Wikipedia bio, but he wrote about 5,000 poems, and I think I'm right that his dad collected them into these books, and the books, from what I can tell, had a really legitimate publisher. I just am curious about like how his older brother was more famous than he was, who was a novelist. But I just think one of the things I read, and it was kind of catty, but apparently wrote a lot to pay for the drinks. Now that I don't know.
Now we're getting
got my attention because I thought, is that we can't do that today, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
there's the motivation.
No.
But I love that idea that he was writing very prolifically to help pay the bar tab. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, it reminds me of something Nietzsche said, which is a very backhanded compliment he gave to Emerson. He liked Emerson a lot. But he said Emerson was a man of taste. He never put anything on his plate that he couldn't digest.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. It's pretty good.
Wow.
Touche. So what a note to end this on,
My goodness.
Andrew. I mean, it's really,
Great.
really it was wonderfully crafted, unconsciously, beautifully crafted to
Gorgeous.
start the more positive things and end with this. So thank you very much. I always hate it when the evening is over, but I think we have to end now. And thank you all, and thank you again, Andrew, for introducing us to this
Marvel.
this
A marvel.
marvel. Is the
Thank
right
you,
word.
Andrew.
So
Yes.
thank you so much.
Oh,
and
great
thank you
pleasure.
so
Thank
much.
you
A
all.
great gift. And this is Planet Poet Words in Space. I'm your host, Sharon Israel. And it was a great gift to me to be part of this group. And I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I want to thank the captain and founder, I think mostly, I'm not sure, Pamela Manché Pearce, and to the other incredible members of PRP, Poets Reading Poets, Jo Pitkin, Andrew Acciaro, and Frank Ortega. And what a wonderful show. Thank you so much.